So low on money. Here, April 1918, things passed very quickly. The Germans launched actually a pair of attacks in conjunction with an Austrian unit and a Swedish unit. You can see they lost this hex. Their line is looking pretty weak, but the Russians have no money and no real capability to exploit this, not enough pieces. They're sending some Serbs that they built, exiled government or whatever, marching down from St. Petersburg. We got forces from here marching in St. Petersburg. It looks like that whole northern border is really rough. Now, the Austrians could spend a buck and rail something up a lot closer. As it is, though, I think we can give a little bit of ground. The next spaces that matter to lose are Kovno and Minsk down here. There's a lot of territory there. There aren't enough Russian troops to really take advantage of how weak things are. In fact, there aren't enough to even brush by what's there. Over here we got some Austrians moving in to the west front line. The Austrians launched an attack here to no effect. I forgot to check to see if the Serbs disappear. Chances are they do. Yeah. So they will be missing, and I think we can still get him back in Russia. I don't know how he escaped, but, you know, he didn't take a major defeat, so he's not removed. Actually, he can't take a major defeat, which is kind of disturbing to me. So I don't know if he can possibly be taken from the game, but whatever. He'll be leading Serbian troops up in Russia, I guess, eventually. And that moves us to May, and we don't have big expectations there either, to tell you the truth. Not until we get some money, and even then the expectations won't be too big. It's going to be very little going on for the rest of the game, but that doesn't mean it's not a close game. Of 18 Russians building up here. There was another attack which took Riga, which is another BC and another morale point. We're one away from the Russians collapsing. Now, if I push forward through the winter and take some points against me, I can ensure that the Brits come in and do something, for whatever that's worth. And then, let's see, the big Austrian army marching. I don't have the money to spend on railing units around up to the Italian front. We still got units trickling in over here. We had an assault on Maubeuge. It did not work. The only thing that did work was the French ended up resupplying Belfort. So now they're in pretty good shape in terms of defending that. But that's kind of worthless. You know, they have to get the points. And the points, quite honestly, are all over here on the Russian front. That's where the big breakthrough is going to happen. That's where I've got to start building Austrian units. Maybe I shouldn't be trickling these over to Italy, but, you know, August isn't far away. I'm not going to be able to walk through Russia. And that's kind of where the problem is. It looks like the only place where points are going to happen. But the thing is, it may not be enough. Right now, we are at 4. 3 from France, 1 from Italy. That's all I can count. Unless there's something I'm not thinking of. I had the numbers wrong again. I don't have enough points over here. If the English come in, maybe I get some. I get 2 for the German Revolution that aren't on there, so, you know, my target becomes 10 instead of 12, but that's it. The economics, we can see the Austrians still holding up quite well. They've got a lot of territory in Russia. I'm not giving them everything in Russia. This is kind of a weird thing. You're supposed to assign it. I've been kind of tinkering around with that, maybe cheating a little bit. I may have fudged them 1 or 2 points that the Germans would have otherwise been getting. Certainly getting all the points down for the Balkans, though. And let's see. The The air situation, the Germans are beginning to take damage. So we got a damaged plane here. The French planes outgunned them. They're better. The Germans can't replace their planes when they lose them. Without Richthofen and his DR-1s in place, and then all the later planes, they're just not going to win the air war over there. The Russians have been having a harder time, though. The Eindeckers are just clearing them out continuously, again and again. It may not be worth having building the planes. These little 6.16s are not very good. But what's exciting is the French are getting some decent tanks. I like that the images of the tanks are on here. And they're also getting Foch, which, not right away this turn, but tanks are a really cheap way to conduct the war. Strangely enough, they're smaller units, and also we're looking at a 5 attack strength, which is enough to start. There's nothing that can face it, you know. Defensively, we're looking at 3s, 2 more for the trench at best. So you're looking at it even right there if there's no air support, if there's no artillery, nothing like that. So there's some possibility for that German line to start cracking. The problem is the French just can't make many attacks because they can only place their planes at the beginning of the month and then only gain a couple of spaces. Also, they just don't have a whole hell of a lot of money. And they do take some losses. So it's the tanks, if they're the lead units in the attack, which of course that's the only way they get their bonus, are going to get destroyed. Now they're cheap, and I can keep replenishing them, but I don't have very many. If I had the Brits in the game, they'd have a whole pile of tanks now too. They just got these 2 new ones, but they had a better one here. And then there's the Russian tank up, which we're going to see coming back in. I love the image on it. It just looks so cool. And it looks that cool. It looks much cooler in reality, looking at some pictures of it. I think I actually saw one of them in the museum in Belgium. Austrians are largely giving up their hopes of leading a German attack into France. There's just nothing to really gain. Lille is the only BC point to gain, and it's going to be pretty tough to cut through to there. I think the better thing is to just try to hold on where I am. Of course, I got this big stack with Falkenhayn here, which I forgot to try to reduce Belfort with. Let's take a couple of shots. He's got Austrians in there, so he can do that. All right, he failed. For whatever that's worth. The French may want to reduce it for points before the Germans can destroy it. Not a lot else happening. No Italian points left. The French kind of need to wait until they get their reinforcements. So everything's been happening over here on the East Front, except for huge quantities of Austrian troops shifting to Italy, where they might actually try to bust through, because if they could get a move on Italy, Nice is over here, Rome, which isn't worth a BC, but it could cause an Italian surrender, you know. So it would. What we did have was the Russians and some Serbs, or Romanians actually, have retaken Riga. And you've got the Germans preparing to pull out of that sector. We're not going to be able to take that back easily. We're looking at trying to hold the Minsk, Kovno, Königsberg line. And that's it. You know, that's good enough as far as I'm concerned. The problem with Riga, and why I didn't want this to fall, and why it was worth holding, is that's a location that the Russians can build in. They could have also built up here at Pskov, but that was a very unlikely attack to succeed in actually taking the city. I had an extra unit here so I could attack Riga using TI and then push another unit into there, which is why the Germans are degraded and having to run away from there. The Russian bomber isn't going to make a damn bit of difference against the Germans because they have no income. Fortnight, the Germans start to pull back. The Russians trying to slip into the space here with their buddies in the woods. The problem really is the terrain at this point. I'm having a hard time moving quickly. You know, there's some nice areas where you can move pretty fast, but these woods are getting in the way, and that's where the Germans are, and it's tricky. We got some Swedes we pulled down navally, and over here, we did have something exciting though. After Germans lost the rest of their air power and they reduced Belfort, I'm probably not going to be able to rebuild it. Foch is making a threat on one of the bargaining chips, and also a threat on the entire German army, because if I can start to cut this way and sort of trickle my troops around, there's a lot of trouble. So it's going to cause the entire army to fall back. First of all, this is important, and there is nothing important here. And secondly, the supply of the army is a problem. Now, the problem with all that is a breakthrough here could get me into, there's a couple of chips here. But again, I don't have a lot of chips total. Right now I'm at 5, I think. Because I replaced that, I've still got that, and I've got 3 French. So it's going to be tough. I'm not going to make it by August. The thing is, though, the penalties, I think it's 1 point per... Yeah, it's 1 point per season afterwards, so things should start steamrolling, I'm hoping. After summer of 1918, well, when I go into the fall, that's 1. And I got to do winter, which is painful. And then I get spring, and you know, that's 3 victory points. I got to hope that I can make a lot of ground in spring, because there's no money to do a winter campaign, really, I think, unless we're close to, you know, eking over the victory line, which I don't think we will be at all. I think the only real hope we have is actually maybe if Austria collapses, because then their army actually collapses, unlike the German one. But the Italians aren't getting the resources, and I don't think the front's going to break over there. The Germans were too entrenched. I mobilized a couple of units, but I was so worried about, you know, preventing an attack, that because with the TI you can hit a space and hit it again and hit it again, so you can wear out the entrenched units if they're the big units that are defending the hex. So entrenching everything, you know, kind of guarantees I'll always get the trench bonus. Well, the problem is it makes you a little too rigid, and Foch made it to make it to Longhi. Belfort was destroyed? No. We kept trying at it. We got some Austrian cav over here in Metz trying to defend things, but it is a fortress, and it has not been reduced. I haven't spent anything on any of them. That's the problem. All those German fortresses, well, my siege guns for France are over here. I don't know how much they're going to help, but they do give the +1. They have a chance of reducing it. But they've really not been doing much. Of course, the Germans can't rebuild their fortresses once they're damaged. So, the Austrians launched an attack against Diaz. They were repulsed, but, you know, they're limiting the Italian forces. Maybe we'll have to spend money to defend the Italians or something. Over here, things are much more chaotic. The Russians are advancing everywhere they can. An important thing is we took Vinsk, so that's a place where I can build new units, and it's closer to the front. Of course, the Austrians are streaming up, trying to prevent the Russians from being able to do much. One thing I've been meaning to mention for a long time, and this is going to be the last regular order turn coming up. Anything after this is going beyond, you know, to where the Entente is beginning to pay a victory point for each season that they go. Now, obviously, they could just play this out and eventually win. Well, you know, because if Russia collapses, the Brits would come in or whatever. But on the other, you know, the game doesn't allow you to do that. It allows you to extend it 3 seasons at most. But you'll notice I never used this map, and I barely did anything over in Africa or on the other side. Obviously, that's because of Britain not being in the game. The Ottoman-British interactions are all going to be down here. But there is an option to play without this map, and then you get something that's much closer to what kind of fits on a normal table. I think the table is a little wide and it kind of overlaps a little bit, but with a couple little cardboard extenders, you could fit this on a normal table, I think. So, you know, and get most of World War One. You'd miss out on some of the more interesting stuff going on down there. But anyway, things have turned very, very fluid, at least in Russia. And then over here, you know, this is kind of dangerous for the Germans, to tell you the truth. The only thing they have going for them, they get to move first, they get to cover the hole. Now, Foch could have actually made an attack on Metz, but he would have been seriously in a dangerous position with that, and no chance really of taking the city. So there were already the Austrian cav up there. A bit of a hiatus, had to rent a car to go to Payson to play in the snow or something like that. Not a lot of snow, but it was a fun time. And scary as hell for me to drive. And I still have to return the car, pain in the butt. Nice car, but I don't like having to drive. We have the Germans pulling back again, trying to cover Metz, which is important. You know, honestly, there's just nothing too important here, except that each hex is hard to take. So there's kind of a, hey, I could have held a line here, maybe that would be worthwhile. You know, it is. I don't need 2 units here. See, here's the thing. I can hold a little bit more space, and I just don't want to give that space up. I couldn't get all the way up Diedenhofen. I couldn't get all the way a line that ran from there, but that is somewhat protected, and the French spent their 1 point on rebuilding their big 5-point tank. The more times that gets to attack, the better I am overall. I think trying to make an attack, you know, against a hex like this or against Diedenhofen just isn't going to gain me much. Especially since my siege guns are all over here on the Italian front. Speaking of the Italian front, the Austrians managed to bludgeon their way back to the border, and that's putting Venice in danger. There's not a lot of good terrain to defend it. Strangely enough, there's a river line, for what that's worth. Trying to coalesce a defensive line against the Russians as well. The biggest news is that breakthrough is pretty massive because the Italians had to mobilize their army again, all entrenched, and start to move it down. That got them a unit cut off from supply because the rail line, the Austrians were able to sweep down and grab the main rail line and the juncture here. You could trace across the river, but not unless you control both sides, if I recall correctly. I didn't bother to look that up. I probably should have, because that is on the southern map. Over here, you can see the Central Powers are beginning to coalesce a defensive line. It's looking like the Russians are going to have a hard time getting too many bargaining chips on that side. This would be the official end of the game if the Entente wished, but since they're losing and can see that after the winter the Brits come in, because Russia will collapse after the winter, and it's kind of Austria and Germany's fault, but we have some chance of some sort. I don't know how big it is, but yeah, should be at 6 right now is what my claim is. So I got 3, 4, 5. I don't know where the 6th one is. 3 in France, 4, 5 for this. I've got a 6th one and I don't know where I'm getting it from. I got it marked. Shit. I hate counting along these lines. It may have been one. Oh no, I got Longley back, so that's actually 4 for France. Yeah, so that's right. 2 more because Germany's in revolt. That puts me to 8. I still need 4 more, and I'm going to be paying 1 for each of the next couple of seasons that I go, and that's going to be kind of ugly because we're not really expecting, you know, maybe we'll make that one up. We got a point here that's pretty easy to get to for the autumn season. The winter season we're probably not going to be able to do anything about, and then spring, well, we'll have the Brits, but man, they're a long way away. I mean, they've got to land their troops and then start pushing somewhere, which may be an invasion of Belgium, of all things. The nice thing about an invasion of Belgium, yeah, there's Antwerp that I could probably take, and then it's a pathway through Liège to Dusseldorf. But that's still only 2, and you know, we're 4 behind already. Say we can break even for 1 month, for 1 season over in Russia. This is going to be really tough. On the other hand, there might be some opportunity to grab things like Salonika that aren't adequately defended. I've been forgetting to do anything with the Greeks, which I think may be for the best because they can start moving southward. But yeah, this is, you know, there's some opening there. There's also some opening against, you know, the possibility against the Turks, but that's not very, very likely. Over here we have 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's another point that'll come in due to the Ottoman map. Because right now we only have 3, 4, 5. Okay, so now I'm at 6 over here, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there's 2 more points that just come in with Britain coming in with their overseas possessions. So that's kind of helpful. So, you know, I mean, which is kind of weird. It's like, yeah, Britain declared war, and now we have more bargaining chips, essentially. But clearly, with Britain in the war and Germany in revolution, this is not going to go well for the Central Powers. If they get a win out of this, it's going to be a rather Pyrrhic victory in a lot of ways. You're going to imagine that, you know, Germany isn't going to gain much, given that they're in revolution. They probably would get to keep their Alsace-Lorraine regions. Poland probably will be more allocated to the Austrians than anything else. And likewise, the Balkan, they'll have control over the Balkan dispositions, if they win. If it's a close win, you might want to say, well, you know, the Brits have kind of come in and said, let's keep things largely status quo over here. Maybe make some slight changes here, there, and elsewhere, but nothing too major. Again, the Central Powers has a slight, what I think is an advantage in terms of being able to move first. Now, it tends to be, you know, you have to commit earlier sometimes, so if you've got like pieces in a reserve, you might have to decide to either leave them in reserve behind the lines or move them forward for an attack. But it gives them sort of an initiative throughout the game. And where it particularly holds up, importantly, is in the air power. Now, granted, that's alternating, but also in the naval and some of the, and in some sort of edge cases in terms of the ground war. But in general, I think it's the biggest effect both on the air and the naval. Now, the air, it's got kind of a pulse situation, but usually there's one air, you know, unit that the enemy has that you want to pin down really badly. Now, with the Germans completely emasculated in terms of air power here on the West Front, that wasn't an issue. But anyway, they get their first strike, and that first strike allows them to catch up and hit the Italians before the Italians can, you know, drive more forces into place, for whatever value that is. The Austrians could have pinned down the French plane. Instead, they went to where they wanted to attack, and that the French countered it and had to lose an air battle anyway. So yeah, we're down another bargaining chip, and now we've got Austrians beginning to stream down this way, and it looks like a big chunk of Italy, the Venice section, that historically had some serious ties to Austria, certainly since the Napoleonic era, is kind of perhaps going to be sliced off if we're not careful. It would be tough to take that from Italy in terms of diplomatically, though. So, given how closely run the game is, I don't know if they're going to have that kind of right. The hard thing, though, is the game was pretty, the actual World War One, if you score it by this, it was kind of hard to justify the German surrender in a lot of ways. The German people had a big problem with it. Even though the German army command could tell, hey, we're done, we're finished. The German people had nothing but successes. The war wasn't fought on their territory. It wasn't even really fought in Alsace-Lorraine. It was fought in France and in Russia. And it's very difficult to accept that they, the kind of surrender that was given, which was fairly extensive, and given the land position that was in place, very different from what you see in previous wars, where one side was really defeated, or if you go to something like the Spanish, the War of Spanish Succession, where both sides were kind of close, and so a real compromise situation was brought up. Instead, it was very clear that Germany was defeated if you were in the know, but, if you look at this game and you see Britain coming in after this winter, well, obviously the Central Powers is finished. So how could they win the war? Well, Britain might broker a peace, but that peace probably will not be significantly in the Central Powers' advantage. This isn't going to be the kind of situation that I've seen in some La Grande Guerre games where, France is, teetering on the edge, Russia has collapsed. Well, maybe not, but Russia's usually pretty resilient in that game. But Britain's in real trouble. But it's actually, the Germans who suffer the political collapse or whatever, or Austria, and it's just almost impossible to win that game, even when you're doing fairly well. Here, so the one thing that's very different here from the historical is that neither of the Central Powers are being blockaded, and one of the big things that really strangled Germany especially was that blockade. They had a real hard time producing the goods that they needed for society to continue, and Hitler learns from that and tries, the guns and butter with no dice strategy, which, you can criticize it or whatever, but the truth of the matter was that is a large part of what caved the German society in, was that the populace was no longer being fed enough, and there were revolts and such not happening, which is why the emperor abdicated. And I don't know, the will to fight wasn't just lacking in the army. It was an across-the-board thing. Now here, Germany's been in revolution for most of 1918, maybe all of 1918 and some of 17, and, they're just steaming along because they've got these rules that allow them to keep their army in place throughout that kind of revolution. So they've got kind of a different kind of revolution from what Austria or Russia would suffer. And, France and Italy and Britain, they aren't subject to it at all. So I don't have any problem with Germany having a special situation in comparison to, say, Austria or Russia. Anyway, I don't know what I'm blathering about at this point. Entente, no capability to counterattack into Venice, so the Italians are trying to do, I'm gonna See, I got a problem, which is that the route to Rome is actually open. There's not much I can do about it, though. And the route to Nice, if I open this up, I don't know what to do. Because I have no replacement units for the Italians. I have no money for the Italians. They're pretty much in a state of collapse. Over here, Foch managed to take to destroy Metz, but not take the Hex. Multiple attacks swinging through, and he's cut, a dangerous route forward, which the Germans are going to have to protect in their next move. Now, this is the other side, though. There is a certain advantage to the Entente. It's sort of a counter-initiative advantage, a defensive advantage, which is that I can't move forward in Russia during the first fortnight, because doing so would expose me to a possible attack by Austrians, with Germans maybe cutting my supply line or something like that. And I just can't afford to move forward for an attack. If it doesn't succeed, even if it does, if it doesn't get me a city or something, then the Germans could slide around behind, cut my supply line, and the Austrians could attack, and I'd be reduced, and it's more likely I'd lose my unit or whatever. And so what's going to be neat, though, is the Central Powers don't get an opportunity to do that in the second fortnight. So I'm able to counterattack in the second fortnight with the expectation that I've got some Russian units coming in up here at Dvinsk. Or if I capture a town like Vilna or something, I can actually, build new units from there and launch my attack from that direction. So, there's a certain advantage in both directions. What I find kind of weird is that the initiative feeling of the advantage is always in the Central Powers' hand. I'm not sure how much could be gained by it, and it would probably be, an obnoxious level of rules to change. But I'm thinking something along the lines of the old Third Reich. They got rid of it, by the way, in A World at War, where the initiative switches at some point. Unfortunately, in World War I, it really happened late in 1918. So I don't think it's worth putting that effort in to try to figure out something that's likely to change at that point, because it really didn't happen until after the Kaiserschlacht ended in the West, where really the Germans lost their initiative, and there's nothing they can do with it. They don't have any planes, they don't have any attack capability, so it's not really a big deal for them historically, and then nor is it in this position. However, in this game it might make a difference as to how the Austrians are capable of interacting with the Russians. I feel like the advantage is actually to the Russians being in that counter-initiative situation, given the territory that needs to be gained and the particulars of the situation, the easy reinforcement. Anyway, we'll continue with another Central Powers fortnight. Lack of supply and such not. Why didn't I move these Austrians? I don't know. Oh well. Oh, they mobilized, that's why. We lost a siege gun here. The Italians mobilizing, preparing to get out of the way, getting their planes out of the way. Really, the only hope is a defense of Nice right now. That's the only thing worthwhile on this front anymore. Venice is gone. Rome, hey, who cares? Italy surrenders. That might mean something. That might mean a better argument for Venice becoming a part of Austria somehow again. Or possibly, a slight dissolution of Italy, but that would be tough to... trying to break Italy back up would be harder than trying to break Germany up, for example, which wasn't even done. Over here, Hutier has moved into Metz, so that's going to be a lot tougher to take. We kind of had our one chance to strike it. We're back up to 6, though, because we took something. Yeah, I counted Metz, didn't I? 4, Yeah, I should only be at 5. I thought I got something new, and I did not. I destroyed Meds, that's it. Over here on the Russian front, the Russians made a attack with their bonus tank. Tanks are awesome because not only do they have a high attack strength, although they have a crappy movement rate, because those things tended to break down, so they were really hard to get deployed properly at the front to attack. I'm not talking about World War II tanks here, which had their own problems too, but nowhere near as significant. But they're also very cheap to replace. I've mentioned this before, and that makes them kind of cool to attack with, because you lose one, hey, you know, I can rebuild it. It's only 1 point. It's like, you know, it's like the attrition results essentially that you're trying to get. But yeah, it kind of sucks because I won't have the money to rebuild this. The French used up all their cash on their attacks, and that means also they won't be making an attack over here in October. So really the only place we can hope to gain ground is over in Russia. We might lose ground over in southern France, though, as a long-term thing. October passes with the Russians performing their final attacks, and not to good effect. They took a couple of losses. Now, here's the thing, though. They did kill an Austrian unit, and the Austrian unit's harder to replace because it has to come from here, but we've got a stream of forces moving up into Russia at a higher rate than the Russians can probably replenish, and we got more coming here if need be. Over in Italy, we can see Italy's not fallen yet, and it's kind of an interesting question of whether or not to capture Italy. I want to do it, I guess, but here's the thing. Italy produces like $10 on its own and is back 5 or 6 $6 due to demoralization. So it's only worth $4. If I capture Rome, Italy's conquered value becomes 3, which isn't significantly less. In addition, I'm able to bomb Italian stuff, so I can drop them to about that level with some good luck. So it's not that big a deal that I haven't taken Rome yet. Although I won't be able to take it by November unless I swing around down here, and I don't own this rail line. So that's not a safe thing to do. I have to cut through the forest here. Over here we can see the French trying to withdraw, but also pushing forces forward from Nice. There was an Italian unit that was moving down here that got cut off and attacked by the Austrians, defeated. So now there's a pathway here that I'm going to have to defend. That may mean, I don't know what it means, to tell you the truth, because I have nowhere to really build the Italian army if the Austrians cut through here. If they take this route, I'm going to have to build French to defend there, and that means that there's less French to try to plow through the German sector. Yeah, there were no points for the French, so they were unable to conduct any attacks of their own. So that's where we go going into November. The Austrians have enough money, they could launch attacks if they wanted to. However, that money's probably better spent on more troops, etc., for defending, you know, what we hold. It's gonna, you know, it's a tight run thing right now, where if the Brits come in, and they will, it's going to be hard for Russia to gain much more ground once they're demoralized, and they failed with what they attempted here. It's going to be hard to hold Nice and with what's present, and it's going to be very, very tough to advance further into Germany with what little. See, the French can actually launch a number of attacks, but they just don't have much manpower left to put into play. Now, once the Brits come in, they can do anything they like, including the invasion of Belgium to gain an extra city there. So we'll try to figure out what works best. But we got another month before the winter interphase, and the Brits are pushed into this. I don't know what happened, but I know this Russian value was up at 15 earlier, and it seems to have been moved down. Probably I moved it as Austrian money or maybe Russian money. I'm not sure which. It's so hard to tell these counters apart for me that, you know, when I'm standing over there moving the track, I may move the wrong one. I gotta put this back here for the reductions. Now, what's important here is demoralization happens at the end of the seasonal turn, which means the Brits will be coming in after the seasonal turn. This is important because they don't get any posting. They just start with whatever they have, and they'll have to go through the whole winter with very little money. They have a lot of naval movement going on. British coming out of Gibraltar. French subs come back out. The Austrians respond. We're not done with the naval movement yet. Over here, we see some British subs heading into the Mediterranean. The German subs heading out towards the North Atlantic. They might try to make it into the Med. If I'm able to be in the Mediterranean below here, it's actually a good place to raid. The West Atlantic's not so good because I don't have a French port, because I'm down here in this little bubble. So, and strangely enough, I think Toulon would count if I'm in the West Atlantic, but that's weird. I didn't look too carefully, but yeah. Anyway, we got a number of the ships out on their way. There's some raiders as well as the submarines. A couple of raiders heading out to look for British ships hunting. Now, obviously, we have the Japanese coming in next turn. We've got the Ottomans coming in the turn after that. And I gotta kind of worry. We've got some additional locations here, but I don't have any troops in any of those as far as I can tell. I've got to actually ship units down there, and I don't know when I'm gonna be able to find the units for that. Now, how terrible is it? Well, right now I have 3, and 1, 2, 3 more. That's another victory point, but there's also the territory on the African map that I have to count into play. So the 3 Russian territories and the 2 French only added up to 5, but now I'm adding another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 here, it looks like. So it looks like I'm gaining like 2 BCs currently, but some of them will be up for grabs by the Ottomans if I'm not careful, and I doubt I will be terribly careful with that, because I just can't really afford to send anything down there right now. Now, I do have a cruiser or cruisers here, and I could probably dispatch other ships to grab forces, but those are African map forces. I can't really throw them onto the Ottoman map, and I gotta look up the rules on the Anzac and the Canadians, because I think they can only be built in their home countries. I'm not sure if the French colonials can only be built in, say, North Africa, in which case I've been kind of cheating, but I had ships before that could have hauled them. I don't anymore. I dismantled them all. But I have been rebuilding that unit. I may not have needed to just because of force pool situation. So one other thing we have is a German raid on Hull. I can raid a port. Well, this one's far enough away from the British fleet that the Brits are not going to be able to reach it in order to stun them or whatever it is. I only have 6 movement points maximum for many, or 6 radius maximum. And the Germans were able to sweep in from the north. So I get a raid off, and the way the raid works is I roll 2 dice. I got to get doubles, and it has to be greater than the current year, which I believe is still 1918, because this is December. And it is not both. Now I could continue my movement with those, and then I'll move the Entente ships, which, as you can see, there's a big battle cruiser fleet. We're going to try to get the blockade into place. The only really interesting thing that happened in the land, the Austrians spent the big money, $2, to make a massive attack here against the French and failed completely. Conrad force destroyed. If it had been a major battle, it would be problems for the Austrians in terms of morale. Brits are setting up along the Belgian border. Now this is a problem because there aren't enough Central Power units to cover the border with Belgium as well as this with any strength at all. And I've got to make a choice, you know. I'm stretched kind of thin over here on the West Front as it stands. And there's quite a possibility of a punch through coming through, hitting here. There aren't a lot of bargaining chips here, though. But there's another one here. And I've got fortresses here and here. And then, of course, here. Nothing there. So I can give some ground up. See the Austrians streaming towards Lyon, for whatever that's worth. Nice is the important space here. So I don't know... but it kind of excites me to see the Austrians crossing. And Italy has surrendered. That has almost no effect on anything, but just thought I'd let you know. Over on the Russian front, not much moved. The Central Powers has their line, and the Russians just don't have the troops to break it. I don't think we're going to see... Jeez. It's so hard to tell. I don't think we're going to see an Entente victory come out of this. But I do think it's going to be a fairly close run thing. Here we are in January of, if I can find the year, 1919. And this is the second season extended, so we get a spring season as well for a third victory point, essentially. The Brits lined up, declared war on Belgium, and the Belgians are defending the border. There's a swamp over here, forest over here. That should pretty much anchor them, so that's going to force the Brits to make an attack if they want to enter Belgium. They're not going to just be able to slip through and start making it to Dusseldorf or whatever. So that's kind of important. Belgium's also in the Congo over here, and they've shown up there. I haven't entrenched. There's no real reason to. There's nothing next to me. Things move very slowly in Africa. So, for example, the Brits are probably going to, probably should have, well, see, they have, I think they have to pay a normal buck to build infrastructure even in Africa. I don't think they can get away with an African buck. But that's weird because the Africa scenario just gives you Africa money. So, I'm going to say... Oh, the Brits have no money. Okay. So they're not building an infrastructure. The French could have one built, but they've got to wait until they get to here for it to be worthwhile, and then they can't make an attack. So we're not going to see much changing hands over there. Japan's in the game now, and they don't have much they can do with their army. The Carolines they could take, that's not worth anything. They can take Tsingato, though, and that's another bargaining chip. I wish that there was a more detailed diplomatic system. Not terribly much, but where, for example, you brought Japan in through negotiations. And the negotiations would include, hey, I've got a bargaining chip on Germany, but modifiers based on Britain, for example. Same thing with the Ottomans. I wish the Ottomans could be brought in through bargaining chips. On the other hand, the Brits very clearly were not that same sort of situation. Both the Ottomans and the Japanese came in because things were promised to them. If the Brits weren't present in Asia, other things might have been able to be promised. For example, Vladivostok, which certainly should qualify as a bargaining chip for the Japanese. They would be interested in that. Saigon, possibly. So the point is that if Britain was not going to get involved, and it didn't look like they were getting involved, Japan might well turn in a different direction. Unlikely, because they had strong ties with the Brits. In fact, it's hard to tell what would happen if Britain entered late in those conditions. Likewise, though, the Ottomans very much came in because they had a beef with Russia. Of course, in terms of play balance, throwing the Ottomans into the game might be just a little too much if Britain's not in, and I think that was the decision making there. So what's hard here is Britain will not be able to cross into Belgium because they only have one buck. Some naval actions taking place in the Med here. A little bit of sub battle going on with the French subs damaging a Greek ship. It doesn't really look like the blockade can be contested. The Germans did another raid over at Hull. The Brits couldn't really send anything out that could face this big stack here. But all they have is the pre-dreadnoughts, and, well, you know, if they had realized that they weren't going to get the attack, they do. They could have sent out a big pile of pre-dreadnoughts and, wow, and cruisers. But they chose not to. And the Germans failed to get anything off the raid. They could have killed the 1 point that was remaining from that. But otherwise, we're pretty much waiting for spring for that. There's the possibility... Oh, geez. See, I did things weird. I skipped over stuff. So I did diplomacy, but then I did half of construction and forgot to build the rest of the stuff. And what I was going to suggest is skipping aviation. Moving it beyond admiralty, which I think is wise, because you're thinking about the ground war when you do the aviation, and there's nothing that really changes. I mean, maybe a little bit of decision making. So I'll tell you one thing, the aviation has to be where it is. So if you had a choice to defend, you know, some place where you might make a landing, the landing could come as a surprise through the naval. So I guess it is an issue. But mainly right now, I don't think we're going to see a lot of fighting because it's too expensive. You know, so the Russians would love to get a breakthrough down, you know, against the combined axis or central powers line. Yeah. I've been playing too many World War II games recently. Anyway, we're really trying to see, hey, what can we use? So like an Austrian unit's coming in here, can we beef up the West Front a little bit? I don't think we have time to do so, but we'll see how that all kind of comes together. I kind of don't want to waste another video on this, but I think it's going to have to happen. The most exciting thing is the Entente makes a slight incursion into the Belgian swamp with Allenby here. That's going to force the Belgians to withdraw their line. They don't have enough units to cover the whole thing. There was a threat, possibly at St. Quentin, if they were mobile, but they aren't. A little bit of shifting of line here. Oop, they're going to move the Entente units into Epinal or whatever, and I've got some shifting to go there, because as the German line shortens, I can bring more force to where it actually can serve a purpose. Entering February here. Russian collapse becomes possible. I checked for this turn, it didn't happen. We've got the whole map in play now with the Ottomans placed. They get an infrastructure to begin with. I figure the best place to put that is here, so I can start oozing my way through here. I've got problems where I need infrastructure everywhere. So Al-Arish ends up, because it's a location, a population center, I end up being able to trace supply from my rail net into here. But to move any further, and I can only move one corps through the Sinai, at a time, perhaps, I'm going to need some rail support here. Now over here, I've got rivers to get me down into Abadan, but I've got to go through the swamp, which is going to be painful, so it's going to take me, you know, two movements to get there. I've also got a guy here. Now this is kind of weird because Africa units can't normally leave the map, but I want to be able to go here so that I can go here, and I'm going to allow that so that I can start grabbing stuff up in Cairo, whatever. Because otherwise I can't. Well, hold on. I can make this transfer. I can move into here directly. So I think I can avoid that because there's just weirdness with that scale of map there. So I don't have to actually enter the main European map to make the crossing of the Red Sea there. I counted my points and I'm again at like 8, but that's after taking Tsingato, which I don't think I had accounted for. You know, I'm having such a problem with the counting in this game, right? I've got 4 in France. I've got 1 in Russia. That puts me to 5. Okay. 6 for Tsingato. And then I count these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That puts me up to 7. And there's another one on the African map. I don't know why I was at 8 already. You know, I'm having real trouble. Maybe there's one I'm missing that I counted before, or maybe I was just wrong. I have no idea. But I have a real problem with the counting in this game. It's just really, really tough for me to keep track of. Mainly because there's that, you know, these are 1/6 the value of those, so maybe I thought there were more over here. Maybe I'm not counting correctly, but I get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, only 8 over here. And I don't think there's anything over here that counts as a bargaining chip other than Tsingato. So there's kind of a, okay, where am I getting these extra points? I don't know. Anyway, I've done my muster side of things. A little bit of production going on. The Turks have no money, so they can't build anything this turn, which is okay, I guess. I find that really weird. Countries come into the game with no cash built up. You know, I mean, I've had turns to mobilize, supposedly. If I come in at the right time, which I'm kind of doing here, I'm coming in the February turn, that means in March I get my production right away. Well, you know, Britain has been waiting 3 months to get their first turn's production. Now, they started out with some cash, but not everybody does. And I guess I'm on to the aviation, etc. Nobody's got really money for an attack. The Austrians have enough money for a winter attack, but nobody else does. Naval operations underway. Forces from India have made it into East Africa. Again, these are special African forces. They can't be used on the main maps. British subs came out and... what is this doing out here? And shot up, oh, it's patrolling that, okay. Shot up the German light cruisers, which were already damaged, and got rid of them. Well, got rid of them. 2 of them, I think. And now we've got a major battle. The Germans stuck at Hull, just sitting there bombing. Well, the Brits just sailed up and said, look, enough of that. No damage was done, but now we've got a huge fleet facing. Now, the only thing that the Germans have in their favor, they've got Hipper with the battle cruiser, but, you know, it's, he's so overwhelmed by the number of pre-dreadnoughts the Brits have that this should be over. Well, this should be pretty bad for the Germans, but it doesn't really hurt them. The only thing that can possibly hurt is battleships getting shot in terms of national will, and Germans have no national will. They're in revolt, and they can't move their battleships. But they can move the rest of their fleet, which I find a little vaguely disturbing. Although there were no invasions of Germany after they went into revolt. Well, after they sort of went into collapse. I don't know if they actually made it to a full-scale revolt. And both fleets steam home without much effect. I mean, heavy losses, but who cares? None of it has any meaning on the game. The Brits are able to come out and beat up the German fleet whenever they like if the Germans come out. That's pretty much what it comes down to. But it doesn't hurt the Germans to come out and do a coastal raid. So it's kind of a meaningless little thing. It could end up costing a point. Much more significant is the British blockade in place. The Austrians chose not to challenge it. It simply isn't worth the effort. You could kind of say this shouldn't be worth the effort either. If the Brits were careful, they could prevent Hull from being able to be hit by just stationing most of the fleet up there. But right now the Grand Fleet the fleet had to go home. Actually, I can just station the damaged ships. They should be back at Hull, not where they went. So that is these. I had to keep one of these proto-cruisers near London, because I should have these here and the others, because it was necessary to haul this turn's production, which was a good tank, nice fast tank, 3 movement points, same as infantry, up to the front or near the front. But yeah, other than that, the whole fleet went up to Hull. I'll probably dispatch some of the units of that fleet back down because I'm probably going to have more reinforcement units coming in. But the majority of the British points are going to be spent on the offensive, trying to take Belgium, Dusseldorf. I can't get much further than that. There aren't, any more. The only bargaining chips on this front are Dusseldorf and Strasbourg. And then I've got a long way to go, or a long way to go to take Vienna, which would also perhaps destroy the Austrians. And there's not enough time, right? Let's say I break through. Let's say I just get there for free. 1, 2, 3. That's 1. 1, 2, 3. First spring turn. 1, 2, 3. Second spring turn. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Truly the second spring turn. I could conceivably make it to Berlin. That doesn't give me anything. I have to make it to here, and the game's over before I can get that far. And likewise, trying to cut through here is probably pretty hard. 1, 2, 3. This is a winter turn. 1, 2, 3. First spring. 1, 2, 3. First spring. 1, 2, 3. Second spring. 1, 2, 3. Second spring. 1, 2, 3. Third spring. 1, 2, 3. And I don't quite make it even to Vienna. Now, taking Vienna would be perhaps of some importance because all the fortresses collapse for the Austrians, their army collapses, etc. But I can't make it. I just cannot make it. So, there's really not a lot of hope here. I'm at 8 points. If I can gain 2, I get to 10 points. 12 is my goal, except Germany's in revolution. That's worth 2 points. If somehow I can get the Austrians in revolution, that's 2 more points. But Russia is -2 if they go into revolution. And they're closer to it than Austria will be. So it's probably going to be a wash in terms of national points. So it's probably hopeless. Could I do some kind of naval adventurism? Maybe take Salonika? Yeah, maybe. But it's really hard. It's a matter of I will have to, because I'm on such a clock here, I'll have to get forces prepared for that and send them out to try to take that, and it'll probably take a couple of units. Much easier would be these down here, but these aren't worth a point each. These are worth 1/6 of a point each. So unless I can take, something in the med, I don't see a chance at it, really. I don't know. Other than the points that came from Britain joining the war, so far, extension of the game hasn't done anything for us. The Russian front is just beginning to stabilize, really. Our march into Belgium, we're certainly going to get Antwerp. We've got siege artillery, we'll be able to destroy the fort. And I can almost assure you we'll be able to take it. But how much further can we get? You know, we can cut through Brussels probably. But, well, Dusseldorf looks like it's open. Elsewhere, I don't think much is going to change over here. The French might fall. That's something to consider. And they might lose Nice. That would be a problem. Over here, I don't know how far the Turks are going to get. They've got to build infrastructure here to be able to continue on. They don't need it here because they got the river line. And is this a port? Yeah, that's a port. We could actually supply that navally. Interesting. So we may not actually need to pay for the infrastructure. Over here, we've got, you know, some movement. We need to build some infrastructure here. We'll be getting some points. So we might be able to take Southwest Africa. There are a fair amount of Germans here, though. So I don't know how likely that is. I don't think we're going to make any gains over here. I should have moved the Turks here. And that's really about it. We'll see. You know, I'm going to send this one up. I don't think there's a lot more happening, but in terms of, you know, points actually changing hands, but there's going to be a lot of battles happening in this last little season of the game in 1919. All right, let's send it up. I actually, not quite yet, because I got a few words I want to say. I'm really impressed with how this game is able to manage the state changes of trench warfare with so little in the way of rules. You know, something like La Grande Guerre basically has a different set of combat rules for the game switching from that early mobile period to the trench warfare, and then it's got some add-ons to make the game mobile again with the TI attacks, etc. Although those really still fit into the second and major system, which is the trench warfare period. The Rand game does it with a you can't entrench until this date. My worry with this game has to do with early entrenchment. How big a deal can that be? Are the French essentially able to create an entrenched defensive line? And the answer is yes, I think they can. I think we saw that in this game. I think when I played a little August 1914, well, I played the starter scenario, which is actually the whole northern map. And I saw the West Front entrench a little early. And that become a real problem. The only issue with entrenching early is there aren't a lot of units to begin with. Yeah, there aren't a lot of units later either. So the lines were very thin. So it might be possible to blast through those entrenchments with good-sized stacks of units and gain ground more quickly, and that the defender doesn't really have the capability to react well enough until the British forces fill in the line and make it thick enough that and solid enough that the Germans can't just kind of sleaze their way through it. But with supply rules as they are, etc., there's not as much mobility as you might want. So I don't know. I really don't know how well it captures that early period of the war. What I saw was too much stagnation when I played it. So that's kind of my biggest worry with the game, is that this attempt at simplicity doesn't quite cut it for that early stage. Now, it works fine on the East Front, because there simply is not, the forces are not big enough. And my question with it was, does it make sense to entrench early or not? And it feels to me as if there's a fair decision there, because historically there's no reason why, you know, the Entente couldn't have entrenched on the lines that they had earlier, except that then their formation is so rigid that if they don't have a lot of excess pieces to help cover that position that they take, it's very easy to crack it and break through along a rail line for larger stacks, and for those to kind of ooze their way in and cause serious problems. So I'm not sure that the entrenchment is a significant problem. It may solve itself by the game itself, and I'm assuming it does, and that it's just my play that made it more difficult. Now here, with this limited front, it was very easy to dig in very early, without the Belgian attack, without the Schlieffen plan in place, and that played into Germany's hands. They weren't planning on, you know, making the West their primary front. They wanted to win their points over in Russia for the most part, and they did. They got 1 point here, and they've lost it in this later stage of the game. So, so far I'm impressed, but not completely convinced that it does it right. All right. Anyway, let's send her up. The other thing I wanted to mention about the Rand game, what it doesn't do. So the Rand game has a slight modification. It has that limitation on entrenchment, but then it has an additional set of rules for mobile warfare. Not just the TI, but it has another step up, which is the technology improving beyond what it really did in 1918. So if you move into a 1919 situation in the Rand game, you end up with something that's closer to some of the tactics that were developed between the wars. And the feeling, I think, that they had was, oh, we'd get more of a real motorized, mechanized forces in play on both sides, really, where you have some, you know, the lessons that were developed without a war would have come a little bit more quickly. And that's an interesting take on things, but I'm not sure it's really necessary. That's a game that can run deep into 1919, and it doesn't have this sort of victory point trade-off. There's a, hey, when, you know, when do you collapse one side or the other more than anything else? And I kind of like how this mechanism works. Don't really object to how the other one works either, though. So it's just an interesting little comparison of how the systems handle things. I find this very clean. But like most systems that use, you know, a combat chart that's this simple with lots of modifiers on it, it takes some getting used to. And especially what really manages to drive this system, and I'm sure I'll get this when I get to the review, but what really manages to drive this system is I'm moving a stack of units and doing something with it. And now I'm moving another stack. Now, that allows you to do the mobile warfare very nicely. And there's a reason that's the system for, you know, a game like Civil War by Victory Games. And I'm sure the new version, the Simonich game, uses something similar, as I understand it. You get a lot of mobility out of, I get to move a stack, now I get to move another stack, now I get to move, you know, now granted that one has a pulsing system to slow things down. The plans that were in place in World War I tended to be so extreme that they were ready to exploit any break in that sort of way. Now, the way it gets around the problem of trench warfare is to say, okay, you've got these little counters that say you can't move through the same hexes, and you can't attack the same hexes, and you can't just pummel the enemy until you get the TI attacks. And I think it just works really, really nicely. It's a really cool system on that stance, and that's what needs to be explored more, not just by me, obviously, by everyone playing it. And I think that's the heart of what really captures, what really makes this game work to whatever degree it does, which I think is quite a bit, is using that pulsed movement with this, yeah, but you can't keep hitting the same hex and you can't move through it. You can't do anything with it. The gain ground is another little twist on that. I don't know how big a deal that is. Because gaining ground doesn't really get you anything until you get it up to the breakthrough. So, gain ground feels a little wonky to me. I'm not sure it causes any real problems. It doesn't feel like you're attracted to continue trying to gain ground on that hex. It seems to me that you want to put pressure from other sides, which is accurate, but kind of annoying in game terms, and I'm not really sure I'm getting that much additional reality, whatever, out of putting those gain ground markers on to justify the mechanical expense of them.